Welcome back to our course on dopamine. And for the next few weeks at Mind Prosperity, we're going to speak about dopamine, its importance, how it works in the brain. And why are we actually speaking about dopamine? Well, the reason we're speaking about dopamine is because it really, really influences the way you feel. And it has a very, very large impact on your motivation in life. So there are some activities that a person can do that increases dopamine, that will increase reward, that will increase motivation. But some of these activities are harmful and will cause a dopamine loop. Now, what is a dopamine loop? Dopamine loop is where you do something that releases dopamine. You feel reward, you feel motivation, then you want to do that act again. You will feel the reward and the motivation again. The problem is when the act is unhealthy, you will get to a place where only that act alone will not give you the benefits that you usually had. Now you need more dopamine to get the same effect. Now you maybe need to do other things to release the dopamine to get the same effect, and this can lead to an addiction in an unhealthy way. The dopamine loop also has to do with the seesaw effect. The seesaw effect is when something releases a lot of dopamine, but then it crashes. Then your dopamine goes lower, meaning you now actually feel worse than what you did before you got the thing that gave you the dopamine spike. So high dopamine causes us to feel very rewarded, causes us to feel very pleasurable, causes us to feel very motivated. Low dopamine causes us to feel very unmotivated. It causes us to feel very unpleasant. So now we see when the dopamine levels in our brain is low, we feel unmotivated. Now there's another hormone called the stress hormone or cortisol. When you are very stressed, it releases cortisol. Now, the thing about cortisol, a lot of cortisol in your body, which is caused by stress, will lower dopamine levels. This is why when a person is extremely stressed, they don't feel motivated. And I'm not speaking about a healthy stress. There is kind of like a healthy stress. I'm speaking about if a person stays in a state of stress, when a lot of cortisol is released in the body, when dopamine levels drop, people feel very unmotivated. They can even start feeling depressed later because of the cortisol in the body that caused the dopamine to lower. So what happens in such a situation? People will start to do things to feel better. To increase dopamine levels, and this is sometimes why stressful environments can cause a person to be addicted to something. This is for instance why when a person is extremely stressed, they will start drinking, they will start eating a bunch of junk food, because the substance they're now using is increasing dopamine levels, and they start to feel better because the stress released cortisol, and the cortisol lower dopamine level. So we're going to speak about quickly speak about what substances do, external substances that a person takes, and it's not necessarily something that you take. It can be things like gaming, video games, unhealthy sexual activities also releases dopamine. Now, like I said, it's not a problem if we use certain things in a healthy way. If we use it in an unhealthy way, it can be very detrimental. So the first thing we're going to look at is the initial surge. This is where we use something that increases the dopamine levels and that causes kind of like this dopamine spike, meaning we take something externally, we do a certain activity to get a big dopamine release. Now, a lot of people don't know that, that what they do cause a dopamine release. They just know, it causes me to feel good. So they take something, and the thing that I'm taking or the thing that I'm doing is causing me to feel good. But the question is that healthy? Is the thing that I'm doing healthy, or is it unhealthy? Now, after this initial surge, we go into the body wants to return to homeostasis. So the body wants to balance it out. Just remember, your body wants to be in balance. Your body does want dopamine. Definitely, your body does want dopamine, but the body wants the dopamine to be in balance. So if you take something, or if you do something that releases like this high dopamine levels and this high dopamine rush, the body wants to bring it back into homeostasis, and that's the homeostasis response, where the body comes and say, listen, because of this increased dopamine, I want to balance it out. So the first thing it does is receptor down regulation, meaning the receptors for the dopamine is being down regulated, so the same amount of dopamine isn't received as much as it used to be in the beginning. So this means the same amount of junk food, the same amount of alcohol, the same amount of drugs doesn't give me the same response anymore because of this receptor down regulation. And then also the other thing that the body will do is neurotransmitter balance. So the body will affect other neurotransmitters such as serotonin, such as GABA. It will release more cortisol because cortisol brings dopamine down. So now, because of this rush of dopamine, and because the body wants to be in balance again, it releases a lot of other things to get in balance or into homeostasis. What happens now? Tolerance develops. Now, what is tolerance? I think most people know this. Tolerance just means that the same amount of the thing that I've been using doesn't cause the same effect anymore. So for me to get the same effect, I have to use something else, or you have to use the same thing in a higher dosage. And this is where this is just the start of addiction now. Now I get to the place where I'm getting dependent on something, because another thing that the body does in homeostasis, also with the receptor down regulation, is when your body gets too much of one thing, it's kind of like your brain gets into the place where it closes the doors and says, listen, we can't let any more in. But now you leave it. So for instance, now you leave the drug, or you leave the substance, or you leave the alcohol. Now your brain says, okay, now your brain is not yet aware of the fact that you left it. For your brain, it takes a while to realize, okay, you're not using this anymore. So what happens now is your brain doesn't allow the dopamine levels in, but now you're also not using the substance anymore. So what happens? Dopamine levels are much lower. You feel anxious, you feel depressed, and this will bring you into withdrawal symptoms. Withdrawal symptoms are things like this. You get anxious, you get depressed, you get fatigued because the dopamine levels are high. And the only cure basically at that time is to get the dopamine levels higher. And if you don't deal with this, if you don't heal this, it can go into a long-term effect where you start to get dependent. And this is where you get addicted. You start to get dependent on the thing that you initially used to release the dopamine. So we don't want to use a bunch of things that causes that are unhealthy, that releases a bunch of dopamine, because we want to stay in a dopamine balance, to stay healthy, to stay happy, to stay motivated in a healthy way. So for instance, if you really enjoy your job, if you enjoy what you are doing, and if you are a person who wants to grow your business, you're good at your job, you love what you're doing, and you're busy the whole time, meaning you being at work, you doing your job, you doing what you do on a daily basis, and it makes you happy. It also releases a lot of dopamine. That's why when you get home at night, again with the seesaw effect, because your body wants to get into homeostasis. Now you're tired after a long day's work. It's a very good time to rest, but a lot of people struggle because their work, their job energizes them. It gives them a dopamine release, and it's kind of like they cannot stop. The word I was actually looking for a word, and the word is ambition. They're very ambitious about what they're doing. Now, if you're very ambitious about what you're doing, it's a very good thing. But if you're busy the whole time, because you enjoy it, because you're ambitious about it, because you're into it, your body does release dopamine. But you will crash later if you don't learn how to take a break, learn how to take a rest, and learn how to be in balance. Okay, So what are unhealthy ways to release dopamine? The first one is stimulants like cocaine. Now this is just one example of a stimulant that a person will use. Initially it feels very good. Lots of dopamine is released, feel like the reward is big, the motivation is big. But again, later you get to that place where your body wants to bring itself in balance. The same amount of cocaine won't do the job anymore, or the same amount of stimulants won't do the job anymore, and you need more. It goes into tolerance. When you get to a place where you decide you want to leave it, you go into withdrawal symptoms, and if you don't go break that thing, it will have a long-term effect. The second thing is nicotine, which can be found in tobacco products. And I'm not going to explain everything, too much, but if we look at things like cocaine, if we look at things like tobacco products, not good for us. Better to totally leave it alone. The third one is alcohol. Alcohol releases dopamine. Now, alcohol, on the other hand, is something that we can say it's not necessarily bad to have alcohol now and then, if you can manage it. If alcohol cannot be managed, it is very, very dangerous. And it's important to go look at your personality. It's important to go look at how are you triggered by things like alcohol. If you are triggered, if alcohol is a very big struggle for you, it's better to totally stay away. But if alcohol can be managed correctly, say for instance, you drink something every once in a while to relax with food because you enjoy it, that's okay. If you can manage it. If you cannot manage it, stay away, because this is also why it's so difficult for people to get off alcohol, because again it releases dopamine, and you get to the place where you need more and more to get the same effect. Now people who get addicted, and this is why we say a lot of times that trauma, other anxieties, other stresses, you're not being totally healed, causes addiction, because trauma, stresses, anxiety, things like that will release certain hormones that will cause, like cortisol for instance, that will cause things like dopamine to be lower. Now, the thing that you want to do is you don't want to medicate the hurt, you want to heal the hurt. Because now you say to a person, stop using cocaine, stop using alcohol, stop smoking. And now when they stop doing it, it takes them back to that hurt, and they feel the hurt and they feel the pain. This is why healing things like childhood trauma, PTSD, dealing with stresses in your life is very important when you go through the process of breaking an addiction. Opioids, like prescription medicine and illegal substances, and this is why I'm very careful. Like, I do know some people need prescription medicine, and I'm all for that, but be very careful of going on prescription medication when you don't need it. Okay, it can be very addictive, and it can have long-term effects. Cannabis, like marijuana, is the fifth one. Let me just go back to opioids, number 4. It's against something that I'm not against the use of something like prescription painkillers or prescription medication. Obviously, I'm against illegal substances. That's not a good thing. And we should totally stay away from it. Prescription medication, as long as it's prescribed by somebody who thoroughly evaluated your condition medically, and you really need to get on the prescription medication. It's very good and very necessary. But like I said, just be careful of not going on something that's prescription medication that you don't actually need. Okay, so number 5, cannabis. Obviously, I believe it's something we should stay away from. It's not something we need, and it's not something that's going to be good. Number 6, caffeine. Cannot tell you to stay away from caffeine. I don't. I love my coffee, but caffeine is something that definitely needs to be managed properly. I remember there was a time where I was really addicted to gym fat burners. Like even if I go on holiday and I didn't go to gym for a week, I will drink fat burners every day, because my body was so addicted to that rush of caffeine, and eventually I left it. Number 7, caffeine again. If you can manage it well, if you can manage it correctly, it's fine. Number 7, sugar and highly processed foods. Also is something that I struggle with, also something that I used to struggle with a lot. I do believe I'm getting better and better, but it also can be highly addictive, sugar and highly processed foods. Now, the reason you want chocolate cake and not broccoli is not because the chocolate cake tastes better. Now, the chocolate cake does taste better than broccoli, But the reason you want the chocolate cake is not because it tastes better. The reason you want the chocolate cake is because of the amount of dopamine that it releases. It makes you feel much better. That is why. Number 8, again, sugar, highly processed foods. If you can manage it, eat it once in a while. You can have it under control. Good thing. I know some people totally stay away from sugar and things like that. That's fine as well. I'm not one of them. I'm one of the people that says, like, I need my piece of cake every single now and then. But obviously it's not something I want to use every day because it disturbs the balance. Number 8, video games and gambling. I don't do either one of the two. Gambling, I do believe, is not a good thing. I do believe gambling is something we should stay away from. Video games, if you can manage it, great. I don't see a lot of people who can manage it. Most people that I see playing video games are extremely addicted. And, you know, when they don't play the video game, when they're away from the video game, they get anxious, they get angry, and they get depressed. So in all, I think video games is not a great thing. But that's for you to decide. Just because I haven't seen people manage it well. I've never met somebody that can play every single now and then and be okay with it. I had an Xbox at a time, had a soccer game, played a lot, got angry when I lost, got obsessed with it. Eventually the Xbox broke. Sorry, my English. Eventually the Xbox broke, and I believe the Xbox that broke was just God's grace on my life. Okay. Healthy ways to release dopamine. I'm quickly going to give you 11 things that are healthy ways to release dopamine. Before I get there, please please subscribe to this channel, leave us a comment. And still, we're going to go on with our series on dopamine. And I hope this helps you. So healthy ways to release dopamine are things that you can do. Say, for instance, you are addicted to something, you're struggling to get off something, and you need the release of dopamine in your brain. These are some things that you can do to release dopamine in your brain, because I do believe a person can break an addiction. There are people who believe, like, if the addiction is too bad, you can never break it. Once an addict, always an addict. I don't believe that. I believe because of the mind's ability, and because of neuroplasticity, and because of the right mental and physical exercises and the right discipline, you can break it. But here are some things that I believe you should do on a daily basis to release healthy dopamine and to balance the dopamine in your body. Number 1, exercise. Exercising is a very good thing to release dopamine. You also see people who exercise, when they don't exercise, they get kind of nervous. So they kind of can get a person can get addicted to exercise, but also all of these things has to be in balance. It's good to exercise 4 to 5 times a week, but if you have to exercise 2 times every day, otherwise you get, you know, angry and aggressive and things like that, maybe you're not at a good place. And like I said, a lot of times it's because of inner healing that we need. Number 2, healthy diet. If you're on an unhealthy diet, you want to break that and go on a healthy diet. It might be difficult in the beginning because our more healthy foods gives us a balanced amount of dopamine, where the unhealthy foods gives us can sometimes give us too much dopamine, and we're used to that dopamine rush. And remember, when we get too much dopamine, like sugar, it gets back to the seesaw effect, where too much dopamine causes our body to drop again. Number 3, meditation and mindfulness. That's just taking time out on a daily basis to be quiet and work on yourself mentally and emotionally, practicing meditation, mindfulness. Number 4, adequate sleep. If you don't sleep well, if you don't sleep enough, the release of neurotransmitters in your brain is also a bit unstable. Number 5, social connections, hanging out with good people, hanging out with the right people, laughing, joking, making fun, having fun is a very good way to release dopamine. Obviously, the opposite is also true. Hanging around with toxic people is going to put you in a stressful environment. You're going to release a cortisol, and you're going to drop dopamine when you are in toxic environments the whole time. 6, engaging in hobbies, doing what you love to do, whether it's sports, whether it's writing, drawing, artwork, whatever you're good at. For me, it's music. Brings us now to number 7. Listening to music is also a good thing. And if it's something you enjoy, you know, if music is not really your thing, when I listen to music, it means I release a healthy amount of dopamine when I listen to music, because I enjoy it. But you know, like I said, if it's your thing, a very healthy, nice thing to do. Number 8, setting and achieving goals, and this is where we get to where we get again to a healthy kind of ambition. Doing something you love. It can be in your job, in your workplace, also in your hobbies, where you set goals and achieve them. Number 9, sunlight exposure. getting out in the sun, going for a walk with your dogs, going for a run, getting out in the sun, very good thing. Number 10, the hormesis effect. Hormesis effect is where you apply a healthy amount of pain to release dopamine. So one thing that I do, and I'm speaking about a healthy amount, exercise is an example of the hormesis effect. For instance, one thing I do is the cold plunging. Every now and then I get in cold water. It's part of the hormesis effect that will help you to release dopamine. But like I said, exercise is a very good thing to do it. Doing difficult tasks also is part of the hormesis effect, where you feel like you've accomplished something and you're focused on something. And number 11, I'm going to end there for today, the flow state. Flow is where you do things that just comes naturally to you. It's just part of your DNA. It's just part of your personality. It's just natural. You just feel like you're in the flow state. So doing things that get you in that flow state is also a healthy release of dopamine. For me, it's writing. I love writing. I love researching. I love speaking. I just get into the flow state when I do it. So whatever your flow state is a healthy release of dopamine. Okay, so I know I gave you a lot of information now in a short time, but I do hope and believe that this helped you. This information will help you on a daily basis, and it's something that you can apply on a daily basis. Thank you so much for watching. We are looking forward to see you in our next video on dopamine. Goodbye.